In today's episode, we are talking about podcast ratings and more specifically, 1-star podcast ratings. Welcome to Podcasting Tips and Tricks with Lyndall Harris, a show sharing quick, actionable tips, tricks and advice to help you on your podcasting journey. Hello, and welcome back to another week. And I can't believe we are at the end of January already and that this show is up to episode 16. My name is Lyndall Harris. I am the host of your show and I run a business called Podcast VA where I help podcasters make the journey easier. If you're a Facebook user, you might like to come and join my podcasting community there. It is called the Australian Podcasters Collaborative, and it's a place to hang out with people who are thinking about starting a podcast, right through to podcasters who have numerous shows under their belt. Further to that group, I have created a new podcasting event here in Australia that is being held in Sydney on the 4th of September in 2020. Tickets are going to go on sale in the next couple of weeks, so if you'd like to be the first to know when they do, head over to my website, podcastva.com, and click on the conference link in the menu and join the waitlist there. Now, let's jump into today's topic, which is all about podcast ratings and more specifically 1-star ratings and how you deal with them. So the reason this came about is because I hadn't jumped into Apple Podcasts for a few weeks, and when I did, I discovered that I had two, not one, but two 1-star ratings. Now, I am one of those people that takes things to heart, and I really felt it and I felt really deflated. And I thought, oh man, it's not a good feeling knowing that there's people out there who don't like you or don't like your show. But at the same time, it's strangely felt okay that there are people out there who don't like my podcast. I totally understand that, not everybody is everyone's people. So you're not going to please everybody. I think what I found the hardest bit to grasp is that there's no feedback that comes with that. So me personally, I don't think I would bother giving a 1-star review to a podcast that I didn't like. I'd probably just move on. But if I felt that I was going to leave a 1-star review, I would be prepared to put my name to it and provide some feedback. So I thought it was a good opportunity to open the topic for discussion. And I did post the question in my Facebook group and found that most people feel similarly. Then they move on and focus on some of the better ratings that they've got. So whilst I agree with that as well, I also think it is a good opportunity to sit back and review and see if there are things that you can improve in your show, and also ask your listeners for feedback. So I'll ask you now, if you have any feedback on my show, please feel free to reach out and pass it on to me, because I'm sure there are things that I could improve, but I just do it my way, and I'm more than happy to take any constructive criticism as feedback and see if I can use that to improve the show so it's a better listening experience for my listeners and my audience. I guess we should maybe take a step back and talk a little bit about what the podcast ratings and reviews are all about. So we will often hear podcasters asking for ratings and reviews, particularly in their outros. And I think it's really important to know that ratings and reviews don't actually have anything to do with the Apple Podcasts rankings as such. So there are a lot of misconceptions out there about how the rankings work, but one of the biggest things to understand is ratings and reviews work as good social proof that people can read the comments, they can decide whether they, if they're looking at 2 or 3 podcasts, not sure which one to start listening to first, they might read the reviews then and look at the ratings. But yeah, that they definitely don't have don't factor into the actual charts. That's more about subscriptions and activity and plays and things like that. So that's probably more what people should be focusing on if they're looking at getting up and down in those Apple Podcast charts. So not only should you, I guess, feel like you should maybe move on from the negative comments, but a good way for me to reframe my mindset, which was a little, again, as I say, I was a little deflated, was to go back and read the great messages that you have received. Read the good reviews. Look at how many ratings that you've got on the higher end of the scale. Look at how people comment on social media, or do they email you, or are they referring you or referring to your podcast? So I have received some truly heartwarming messages from people that have listened to the show and reached out personally to say thank you and to tell me that it's helped. So that definitely did make me feel better when I started to turn my mindset around to focus on these instead of the 1-star reviews that I didn't have any feedback on. Besides rating and reviews, I thought I'd just touch on another couple of things that you can look at and think about to see if your podcast is successful to you, and remembering that everybody has a different objective when it comes to podcasting. So for me, it was very much looking at a few different factors. It has definitely built my brand awareness. It has helped me with the relationships with ideal clients, referral partners, influencers. It has certainly increased my website traffic. My leads have been a lot higher since I launched my podcast. And I also know that I've had people sort of in my sphere, but the podcast has been one last step to converting those leads. But also for me, it helps with the content creation. I'm not so great at writing content. So the fact that I can record the content and then I can use that in my email marketing and my social media posts and what have you is just other ways that I look at how my podcast is helping. So just a reminder, don't get disheartened if you get 1-star reviews. Just know that you can't please everybody. I guess I would say if you did leave me a 1-star review, which I assume that you probably don't listen to the show, feel free to reach out and give me your feedback, because I really want to improve it so that it provides a good listening experience for you. And actually, I would like to ask and open this opportunity for any of my listeners to feel free to send me any feedback if there's anything that you think that I can improve in the show here. My email address is Lyndall, Lyndal, @podcastva.com. You can find the show notes for this episode and all of my other episodes on my website at podcastva.com and clicking on the podcast button in the navigation bar. I have been receiving some great reviews in Apple Podcasts, and as I've mentioned in previous shows, I am going to share some of those with you. This week's review is from Karina O'Brien, who says, "This show is one that I make sure I listen to every week as the content is so valuable." Karina has just launched a podcast called Working Mamas, so I'm glad that you found the show useful in helping to launch your show, Karina, and thank you so much for your feedback. That is it for today's show, a nice, short, sharp episode, and I look forward to chatting to you again next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe in your podcatcher so you don't miss an episode. And whilst you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me a rating and review to help other podcasters.